CRM. Today, we have a very exciting show. Finally, we're getting to the heart of the matter. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics. What do those terms mean and how do we apply them to business? Well, we're going to find out with our next guest, but first, I want to introduce our co-host. With us as always, Megan Heuer, Principal, Heuer B2B.
Hey, thanks, Colin. I am very, very excited to be here today, and I'm so excited for our guest, Amy Anderson. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you guys for having me on your show. So I've been in the analytics industry for almost 30 years. More recently, I worked with Colin at Merkle, and then I was the Vice President of the Analytics and Insights at Subway. This past year, I've been part of a management consulting team called the Zappel Group, and we have been doing a lot of education around some of the newer buzzwords. Like in the past, we've all talked about big data, the cloud, and more recently, as we talk to clients, they feel they need to know what artificial intelligence is, or AI and machine learning, but it's clear when you start to peel the onion, they don't really understand the nuances of those two topics.
Well, Amy, I think it would be a public service if today, you could just start by giving us those definitions, something that everybody can understand. What is AI? What is machine learning? How are they different? And maybe an example of how they're being used today that we can all relate to.
Sure, absolutely. So let's start with AI. AI, a lot of people think is more that heavy analytics because it sounds sexy, like my background, artificial intelligence, ooh. But really what it is, it's a fancy word that is how a machine actually is automating processes that analytics used to do, okay? So for example, and everybody's experienced this, AI is used to automate something called collaborative filtering. Okay, that's another word that maybe is a little scary. But in the background, what it is, it's a recommendation engine. So all of you, when you have purchased a product, let's say, on Amazon or, your favorite clothing store, if you like this, you also like that. Now, that is something that we automate, and that's where AI would come in. So, and because we don't have the analysts doing that, that frees them up to do more of the predictive analytics. Another example is Pandora. When you have music that you're playing on a station and they also say you might like this, thumbs up, that's great. So should I give an example of where maybe AI doesn't work as well, or we can trip it up and then we can talk about machine learning?
Please do.
This is kind of a fun one because, you want to be careful. AI and machine learning do not replace your analysts. So an example of AI just kind of doing what it needs to do without understanding what's happening. I share a Spotify account with my son and his girlfriend. I like old, classic rock, maybe some alternative. They like rap. What's interesting is how Spotify then recommends music. And if you think about mushing all of that together, guess what they come up with? Funk.
Funk?
Oh.
Funk.
You got to give me an example. You can't lay the word funk down and not give me some funky beats.
So like Brick House, even Aretha Franklin.
So through data, you've actually created a hybrid person that Spotify is now catering to.
So machine learning is a subset of AI, but how it's different is it's actually using the statistical models behind the scene to make predictions. But where it gets to be the machine starting to be more intelligent, as you add more data, that algorithm gets refined so that it gets smarter over time. Okay, so for example, and I'm going to use Spotify again because, Pandora again, because they are using that as you have more of a relationship with the program. That's another application where their products are trying to learn more about their users so that they can have a better interaction. So with with Pandora, as you're listening to the music, they have the thumbs up and thumbs down. And when you're interacting with it, that's giving that system information to fine tune how they're then recommending things to you. And that's the machine learning behind the scenes.
What advice would you offer to a young person who's thinking about getting into the area of data science, and things that they should really be excited about if they want to pursue that field?
Well, you're going to in school learn about, the statistics and the math, and that's a very important building block to be able to then start to leverage the information. But think about, as you're learning these things, how you can apply those to real life. Now, how do you apply it to the communication that you're getting on your phone with your favorite app and how you want to order your food? What is it that you, as a young data scientist, could do to help make that experience better? Ordering clothes. I know my son loves Urban Outfitters, and he's like, this is so cool. I just added your credit card in one click. I can order anything. I'm like, well, that's good for you. That's not so good for me. But behind the scenes, think about all those connections that have to happen to make that experience so wonderful.
Well, and I think those are, in a way, I can see young folks wanting to go into data science because it might feel kind of empowering, right? Rather than having things done to them, they
Right.
get to be part of shaping the way that our world is going to work, and make it for good, right? And make it to be the good things, and or to get more to mom's credit card. But hey, whatever.
Right. Exactly.
Amy, can you talk a little bit about the course load, right? How would a young person in college go about becoming a data scientist?
Well, there's a lot of different avenues. And today you have a lot more choices than I definitely did when I was in college, but math, statistics, some of the applied practices like economics or econometrics is always good. Now they do have the business statistics, and they actually do, some colleges actually have CRM. So, the math, I think, is absolutely essential. And even if you don't love math, but you might be good at it, that's where the application of it can be so interesting. So think about what you can do with the skills that you've learned. Also understand that the tools that you have today are so much more than what we had. You may have, some professors may have you try to figure out, I have got to do this by hand, but there are software packages, online tools for you to do those things. I mean, this goes back to the AI and machine learning. Some of the coding I had to do back in the 90s, I did by hand. It was probably 90% of my job. Now with AI, that stuff is automated. So then I can do the fun stuff, which is really doing that analysis, the prediction, and figuring out what's predictive. And that's where machine learning comes in, so that it can automate, and then you can start to be telling the story, working on the insights, and that to me is the really fun part.
And Amy, quick question, is Python the language du jour, or the skill du jour to pick up in preparation for data science these days?
That is one. Another one is R. Some new things on the street that are, a lot of my analysts loved. If you guys are familiar with Alteryx, which is a really nice tool that helps you get the data ready. Because, even with AI, you still have to get the data ready. You've got to get it cleaned. And the tools they have now to get it to that point are so much better than what they used to be. And then there are new platforms. So if you look at the Marcom space, it's a sea of partners out there. And there's some really good ones that have stitched together these, disparate I would say steps in terms of understanding, the beginning of your analytics, which is getting the data cleansing, all the way to being able to do the modeling, all the way to doing, audience activation or attribution. Like Clario is a partner of mine, and they're excellent at having that full spectrum. And what's great is it's made, I think, the data science so much more fun, because you're not just doing the grunt work. You're actually getting results. And when you can see how the analysis that informs what you should do, and you actually do what the data is telling you to do, actually shows incremental gains, it's like, oh my God, it works. I mean, that's where it gets to be super fun.
The look in a young data scientist's eyes when they finally derive insight.
Or they say, I'll never forget one of my clients, he's like, oh my God, it worked. I'm like, yeah.
The ability to not only kind of have a predictive model, right, but to use machine learning to improve on that over time, right? And that even extends to test and learn, where we're looking at, which piece of creative, right, or which call to action works better. And, having the machine and the artificial intelligence do that updating in real time, versus sort of a tedious test and learn reporting cycle.
Right.
You guys agree, but that's kind of where I see the magic happening, where, we're really in the business of behavior change at that point.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, Colin, Adobe is a great example. There's other tools out there, but to have it be more of that iterative. So think about the attribution modeling on the back end, understanding, the combination of channels and touch points that a consumer needs to encourage that purchase without being irritating. And then having the machine learning understand that and then feed that back into your next targeting campaign, whatever medium that is. That's kind of the holy grail, because then you're looking at true optimization, and you can turn those levers to optimize. And, there's very few companies that I think have reached that holy grail, but it is attainable.
Amy, thanks. Megan, get it over to you. What are some of your favorite emerging B2B case studies in this area?
Yeah, well, the really interesting thing is the B2B case studies are getting remarkably similar to the B2C case studies. And for a long time, I think we said, hey, those fields are very different. And in many ways, they still are. But I think one of the things that's been a consequence of COVID and of the majority of interactions going online is that they have now created a data stream that we didn't always have before. Now we actually have trackable, knowable interactions across every stage of buying, across all of our post-sale behaviors, and all of that data then becomes a treasure trove for companies to use for analysis and to understand what works, what doesn't, with whom, when, and then the fun part is that's when your analysts who are given this information can start to figure out why and what to do about it. So what we're seeing in B2B is, first of all, the use of these technologies increasingly, but some of the initial use cases are definitely similar to B2C around next best action or next best offer. What things should I do to get this customer to take the step that I want them to take, whether it's to say, hey, here's the next thing that we should be putting in front of them to encourage them to upsell or cross-sell. Or it could be in the post-sale environment, what feature of a product they're not using that we could be encouraging them to use that we know leads to retention and better outcomes for customers overall. So those are a couple of examples. We're also seeing it very much in the realm of sales that historically hasn't been super data-driven in a lot of ways. In some ways they are, but in other ways they really aren't. And when it comes to the actual behavior of sales reps, that's been really hard to get at. But now you see companies like a Gong or others that are making it very easy to analyze ongoing sales interactions and conversations, timing, frequency, content, balance of speaking, all of those good things that allow them then to predict the kinds of conversations and interactions that lead to wins. So these are all, I think some really exciting use cases in B2B, but Amy, you made the great point, right? AI and machine learning are job creators. in B2B and B2C, because what they're doing is taking the really boring routine stuff off the table, letting the machines do that for us, and freeing up the time for the creatives, the strategists, the analysts to understand that data, use that data, and come up with those more important breakthroughs that are going to really help us with growth.
Can somebody please comment that I'm drinking out of a blood bag?
Well,
You know
I was going to ask you, but I didn't want to be rude. I was like, maybe he's on a special diet.
Should we be concerned, Colin?
It is right after Halloween.
Peak vampire?
I had some leftovers, sorry. Quarantine hasn't been kind to me.
It's making us all a little crazy.
Antibody cocktail.
Yeah.
We got to do something on the show each time. But I could keep talking about these case studies all day. Another one of my favorites is from it's from the customer service industry, obviously CX. You have so much velocity, volume, right? Whatever the other V is on data, that you can continuously learn and update. It helps on the rep side, right? When we're looking to see which responses work best, and through text analytics and comparing and A/B testing, my gosh, you sort of figure out which phrases are the best to use in different situations. And I've seen that in both B2B and also B2C. And what's the future maybe of analytics and AI? Is this coming to maybe a smaller or mid-sized company near you anytime soon?
Here's the deal. The big boys have been playing with the big boys for a long time. But there are a lot of other players out there that are affordable, nimble, they're integrated. And this sounds terrible, but honestly, this pandemic has really forced everybody to move that much faster, because there's companies out there that cannot survive unless they've done the transformation. So I think I mentioned Clario before. I mean, that is a great platform for somebody who can't afford Adobe. And there's nothing wrong with Adobe. It's just, it's not affordable for everybody. Plus you have to pay to have it integrated. That's been a wonderful offering that we've, partnered with and had some great success with. Other ways to make things move faster. It's maybe don't do all of it at once. Look at what's the most important thing to get implemented. So for example, a lot of companies out there, they don't have an LTV model. And how can you target your customers if you don't know how much value they are to you, and have that strategy around the targeting to get them, retain those high value customers. Look at what you need to do to grow those that are maybe in the middle, and then, don't focus on the ones that don't want to have a relationship with you. Figure out and build lookalikes to go after other ones that look like your high value customers. Now, to those of us who have been working in CRM for a long time, that seems like the absolute basic, but it's unbelievable how many companies just haven't gone there yet. And if you don't have that foundation, it's really hard to even transform. Because if you're not doing that, and you're going to go out and buy Adobe, what are you going to plug in to make Adobe do for you? That's a missing piece. A lot of people are like, if we implement it, it will just happen. And that's not the case. There's a little bit of work that you have to do behind the scenes. And I know Colin, because we've worked together, have both dealt with that. And, that's where the analysts and the CRM marketers need to come in is, these products, you need somebody to drive them. You don't buy a car, put it in your garage, and not have gas or a driver. Right? I mean, that's
well
one
said.
of my...
Megan, you want to bring us home?
All right. Well, Amy, I really do believe, as I said earlier in the show, that it is a public service to help us all understand the difference between AI and machine learning, and to think about the really, really positive ways that they can be used. Colin and I, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to learning more from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.